The exploitation of scale economies depends upon one profound change, and it's not really an invention. For example, if we take garments manufacture, which is a massive new industry, the technical invention there is the loom. But when the loom is invented, the loom's made, and who buy the looms? Individual peasant households, and they put the loom in their cottage. And so the loom is initially used without any scale economies at all. It's just cottage by cottage by cottage. The cottage just sits there with the loom spinning away. What brings all the looms together is the realization that you can harness water power. And to harness water power, you need a fast-flowing stream. So the first factories are where you can find a fast-flowing stream. So they're not even in cities. They're on hillsides. And the water flowing down fast, so the little paddle wheel turns fast, and then you attach a post to that paddle wheel, and then you can run a lot of looms off that one turning paddle wheel. For that, you need to bring people together so they're near that paddle wheel. That's why you get the first factories. And then you get the specialization that comes alongside bringing everybody together. So we move from muscle power to water power. It's still pretty limited because where are the factories? Up on the hillsides, in the middle of nowhere. So that's the first industrialization. And then we move to another order of magnitude of scale economies when we discover another source of power. And that is the move from water power to coal. We can dig the coal out of the ground. There's a technical problem. When we dig a deep hole, it fills with water, and so we need a pump. That's where the steam engine comes in handy. The steam engines are first used just to pump the water out of a mine so we can get the coal out. There's still a problem. Coal is heavy. The people who are in the towns, that's where the market is. The coal isn't in the towns. It's in the middle of nowhere. And so we need some way of transporting the coal to the towns, and putting coal on a donkey and carting it along is very, very expensive. And that's where a simple new technology becomes handy, which is canals. Ideally, you'd use a river. The rivers don't go to the right places, so let's make a river, right? An artificial river, we dig it. The first people who do that are the landowners, the lords, the dukes, and the ones that do that, they become the billionaires of their age. Because the payoff to being able to bring coal and then bring people together in factories in cities is huge, because now at last you can cluster the factories. And that's what generates the mega cities of the mid-19th century, places like Manchester, which grows from one of the first canals ever. So there's the harnessing of scale economies and specialization in manufacturing. It is this sort of agonizing process that's not really so much driven by inventions as driven by sequence. You do one thing first, and that permits something else. Today we can, in some poor countries, we can see modern manufacturing production side by side with artisan manufacturing production. And so we can actually compare the payoff, the productivity payoff to modernity. And a colleague of mine has done that in Addis Ababa, looking at Addis Ababa manufacturing and comparing like with like, making the same stuff. And he compares a relatively big size of informal activity. Remember, I told you in Dar es Salaam, the modal firm has 1 worker. So in Addis, he's looking at firms with 4 workers. Informal firms, informal manufacturing firms with 4 workers. And then he compares that with the bottom edge of a modern manufacturing firm. You get some manufacturing firms with thousands of employees, but he looks at a firm or a group of firms with just 50 employees. Right? So we're going to compare the bottom edge of modernity, 50 workers, with the top edge of informality, 4 workers. And what he finds is that when we move from 4 workers to 50, productivity per worker rises tenfold. Not 10%, 10 times. Now, if productivity rises 10 times, incomes can also rise. That is the ascent out of poverty by harnessing scale and specialization. But it's quite difficult to make that leap. Starting in 1750, Britain couldn't just leap to modernity. It had to go through the tedious business of step by step in a sequence. You make first what you can. You make candles. And then as you ascend this sequence, the candles become redundant. At some stage you say, thank goodness we don't need to make any more candles, we can do gas, isn't it wonderful? And then, you know, by 1920, the gas is starting to go and people say, let's switch on the light. And we're in the world of electricity. But Britain in 1750 couldn't leap to the future. South Sudan, Sierra Leone, not quite as badly placed as Britain in 1750, but their options for leaping to modernity through industrialization are still pretty limited.